Hello, everyone. This is Keith Stone with the Center for Atlantic Studies, and I'm here again with Greg, Nagy, Janet, Aylin, and Sarah for HeroesX office hours. Today is hours 7 and 8, the vase painting chapter, and the psūkhē chapter, the psychology of the hero chapter. Let me see. Why don't we read? I'll read both questions, and then we'll discuss them.
Yes.
Together, perhaps. Okay, hour 7 question. In the vase paintings that you have read, do you find significance in moments of eye contact between the painted figures? And that's primarily Boston Hydria, but many others.
Yes.
And for hour 8, the question is, can the psūkhē of Patroklos read the thinking and emotions of Achilles? Okay.
Not easy, either of them. May I just say something preliminary about eye contact? And I'm going to think of 2 specific examples. One of them is in Iliad 9, where Nestor, who is giving instructions to the ambassadors, the 3 ambassadors who are going to go to Achilles, also makes eye signals to them, and the expression in Greek is den dilon, which is hard to translate. I'm not exactly sure what it means, but it's almost as if he were winking at them. But I don't think it's winking. It's somehow, I don't know, giving them stares or anyway some kind of visual cues with the eyes. So there's a case in the verbal art where we have a specific reference to eye contact. And then something that I was just reading in Odyssey 10, I know that's not yet current for us, but there'll be a moment in Odyssey 10 where the witch Circe is giving instructions to Odysseus about how he should sacrifice in order to make mental contact with the dead. And it's the weirdest thing. The 2 sheep that he has to sacrifice, one male, one female, at the spot, they have to face one way, and he has to turn them to face one way towards the west, towards the darkness, while he faces, and evidently, in the opposite direction, I guess, towards the east, where a confluence of infernal rivers happens to be. I'll leave it at that, but I'm saying these, and I'm sure there are other examples, help us realize that the verbal art is also preoccupied with visual cues, and visual cues that involve some kind of eye contact or avoidance of eye contact. But did you find that the participants were troubled by this question, or?
No, I think that they've been looking at some of the images and giving some specific examples and trying to understand, well, what's the significance of which direction people are facing.
Yes.
And perhaps 2 of the ones that contrast the most is the moment of Achilles and Penthesilea maybe making eye contact but falling in love, but it contrasts with image V1. Achilles and Hector are facing each other as they're doing their acrobatic race towards each other to fight. So there's going to be definitely antagonism there. And we've talked before about the difference between attraction and antagonism, I think, between heroes and gods. But can that happen between humans as well?
Yes. I would say that any signal that you get in either verbal or visual arts will also be readable by us, as you know. And maybe this is the time to bring up something that doesn't really come up in my discussions within the framework of 7 and 8, hours 7 and 8, and that is situations, exceptional situations, where the character who is depicted in visual art is not in profile but is face front. Whenever that happens, a rule of thumb can apply, which is that the character that is, how can I say it, looking out from the picture is at that moment making eye contact with the viewer, which would mean some kind of second person address from the first person who would be the represented figure. So you go into an I-you axis as opposed to a he, she, it, they axis, which is the profile. It's as if the profile were the third person narrative, whereas the face front situation would be first, second person narrative or even dialogue. And as I say, I'm sorry, we don't have that in any of our pictures for 7.
What you're saying, Greg, reminds me of the moments when the Homeric poet, as it were, turns straight to one of the characters and starts addressing them instead of narrating what Patroklos is doing.
Yes.
At one point, the narrating poet says,
I'm glad you mentioned.
And oh, you, Patroklos, this is when your doom was approaching.
Yeah, it's Patroklos who gets that treatment in the Iliad. There are 2 other characters who get that treatment elsewhere. One of them is Menelaus, and the other is the swineherd in the Odyssey. But yeah, when that happens, it's assuming that the given character is not only a character in the story, it's he or she is also a part of the, I hate to say audience, can I say the group that's hearing the performance. And there's an interesting ethnographic work by somebody called Dwight Reynolds, who actually witnessed in an Egyptian oral poetic context, I mean a latter-day Egyptian oral poetic context, performance indexes where the performer is addressing characters that the performer is telling about, and there it's clear that the reason for doing that is that the character is assumed to be in the group that is listening to the performance. There, I managed to say it without using the audience word. I don't like the word audience because audience implies something passive. It's like you're in an auditorium and you're looking at a stage or something, and you're not participating directly in the performance. And I think most performances in oral traditions are predicated on the idea that everybody is part of the performance, everybody. And that, I think, extends to visual arts as well. If you're viewing something, you're part of the picture.
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking about how Achilles and Patroklos are the ghostly patrons of the athletic festivals celebrated in their honor.
Yes.
And if we imagine the Iliad being performed at something like this, it makes perfect sense for the poet to turn to address the ghostly presence of Patroklos.
Exactly.
Or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad you used the word ghost. I kind of backed away from it in my write-up of hours 7 and 8. I keep saying spirit, but I'm comfortable with ghost. I mean, there's a reason for my saying spirit, because psūkhē kind of straddles those situations in English where we could say spirit instead of ghost.
Mm-hmm.
It's difficult. It's Homeric usage of psūkhē is so difficult that it's a tribute to the difficulty of the diction there that I used the most vague term I could think of, which doesn't make you think, okay, this is the psūkhē of somebody who's already dead versus this is the psūkhē of somebody who's still alive, because you have both situations in Homeric diction.
Right.
On that psūkhē where he appears to Achilles, and he is life-size, which is quite unusual. One of the participants has pointed out that sometimes a god can take on the appearance of somebody, whether alive or dead. Is that something that might be going on here, or is that size signaling something else?
Yes.
Oh, right, because in the vase paintings, the psūkhē is often very tiny. So why is this one so big?
And it is surprised as well.
Yeah, it always bothered me that Achilles seems to be surprised at the size of the vision of Patroklos's psūkhē. He says, "Wow, you're life size. Weren't you supposed to be a miniaturized Tom Thumb sized vision of yourself?" Because in certainly in the vase paintings, the psūkhē is a miniaturized image of the self, but in the Iliad, it's a life-size apparition. Ooh, I used another word, apparition.
That's nice. It works with the word epiphany in some ways.
Yeah, it does. It does. It does.
Yeah. House 7 is certainly long to read, but it's worthwhile because, it's very worthwhile because, it brings us the visual art. And it also shows us, I think the participants are wondering also if the visual art is more limited than the verbal art. There's more limitation in representing on a vase. And what do you think?
Hélène, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because certainly for us who are witnesses to the evolution of Greek visual art, and we know that what today people call archaic seems to you and me to be primitive compared to what happens, let's say, in the 4th century BCE, when, for example, human figures are represented so realistically that it's almost like a replica of, how shall I say it, real life humans. So yeah, is visual art primitive in these 6th and 5th century paintings that we look at? In some ways, yes. If you think of it as if you think of the art as something that approximate realism, it's not realistic in the sense of what you and I would expect in a photograph or a three-dimensional hologram, sure. But there is realism in other ways, in terms of what our impressions are and how we subjectively view an action or a face or whatever. So I don't know. I think it's sophisticated in some ways and unsophisticated in other ways. The kind of art that we've been looking at, and the realism is not so much surface visual realism, but maybe psychological realism. And I would say, isn't it kind of comparable that when you have characters talking to each other in Homeric poetry concerning battle scenes, about battle scenes, you say, well, that's not realistic either. How can somebody deliver a 100-line speech in the middle of a hand-to-hand combat? That's not realistic either. And yet it's highly artistic. And I would say that the paintings that we've been studying, especially in 7, are realistic in some ways, even if they're not in superficial ways. It's not easy, not easy. Yes. Janet, sorry.
On the visual art, we sometimes see names written on the pottery, and
yes,
and some we don't. Would this say the characters were not easily recognizable, and the maker put the names on them, or did it? These stories were becoming. More alien to people. Now we have to put the names on them. Do we know what inspired people to put the names on them?
I'm not 100% sure, but I think you're onto something. It's a little bit like a situation where you're looking at an English language film and suddenly you get subtitles. And you say, wait a minute, I don't need subtitles. This is in English. But sometimes you really do need subtitles. So maybe it's a crude analogy. What I've done, what I've just said is subtitles. And I don't know. It's also true. May I be confessional? When I see a French movie, if I see the subtitles, I stop trying to understand everything in the French, and I just look at the subtitles. and I feel like I'm cheating. Because I say, Greg, don't be so lazy. Turn off the subtitles if there is a mechanism for that, and make an honest attempt at hearing the French. But I have to confess, my cognitive powers are sometimes failures in that situation. And I'm teasing Hélène as a francophone when I say the French sometimes speak too fast. Ha, ha, ha. Of course, English-speaking people speak too fast too, a lot of times.
I agree. Definitely agree.
How about these accessories that figures often carry in visual artistic depictions of them?
Yeah.
You know, Heracles is often wearing a lion skin, a lion head and skin.
Yes.
Are those labels like written out names to help people along in understanding the stories?
Since we're talking about the French language, my dear friend, my late friend, Nicole Leroux, used to describe even Greek names that mean something as micro-récit, as a micro-narrative. And in general, you know how I like to say to people who are discouraged by the difficulty of the verbal art, and I say to them, oh, for heaven's sake, don't be impatient with yourself. It doesn't matter if you don't get it the first time. The medium will keep coming back at you and hitting you over the head again and again and again with messages. There's so much reinforcement in the medium, and I think the same thing goes for visual arts. Lots of reinforcement. So if you don't get it the first time, you'll get it the 17th time.
So how about when Patroklos appears to Achilles? Does Achilles know who he is right away? He's a little surprised, as you said. Who's this big ghost showing up? I need a label.
Well, no, I think he knows immediately. It's just that he's surprised by the size.
So let's turn to hour 8 to that question.
I think he knows. He knows right away. He knows right away.
Can Patroklos the ghost understand what Achilles is thinking and feeling? Can he tell?
Okay, here we go. That was a difficult question. And do you think I antagonized our dear participants with that question, or what?
Go ahead, use one of you three. I'm looking through the answers and I don't see antagonism.
People aren't too mad at me for asking that question, because here I am. I'm going around defining psūkhē as a disembodied conveyor of identity after death. That means technically, a psūkhē is just a picture. It's just a representation. It can't think. It can't feel, and yet. And yet it happens all the time, and it happens when Patroklos's psūkhē appears. There's emotion there, there's thinking there.
Well, one of the participants is quoting part of the speech and saying, "Well, you've forgotten all about me, and you don't care about me."
Yes.
They're saying, well, if he doesn't get that Achilles is absolutely remembering him and caring about him, then how can he know what he's thinking? Maybe he doesn't. He couldn't read his thinking. But that's one argument.
It's one argument. Let me throw something else into the mix, which is troubling and in a way makes things more interesting. Here it is, that after all, this isn't just any psūkhē of any warrior who happens to be a dear friend of Achilles. Let's face it, this is the alter ego of Achilles. Therefore, it's a mind and heart that can think and feel exactly like Achilles. So that complicates things even more. And sure, we could pseudo-psychologize it and saying, oh, well, maybe Achilles is projecting his own self onto this disembodied self who is in transition from the living to the dead, and then what happens after that. There are all sorts of optimistic scenarios, but they're mysterious scenarios. They're scary and can't be 100% sure. I think it's just beautifully handled in the narrative. And I'll stick to my programmatic definition of the psūkhē. It's supposed to be unthinking and unfeeling, but this is a very special situation. How's that?
It does seem to, I forget who says it now. So, which one says, I remember when we used to have all these close conversations as friends before I was dead or before you was dead. Who says that? If it's Patroklos's ghost, then he's responding emotionally to Achilles, but I forget who it was.
And I think we're meant to forget, dear Keith, it's so reciprocal that it's like talking to yourself. And I think that's the subjective effect. It's your own self who prefigures your own death, talking about what it was like when we were both alive. Wow. And soon we'll be both dead. It's very mystical. It's very beautifully handled.
Could I go back to the quotation that one of the participants brought up, as Sarah was saying? The psūkhē of Patroklos says to Achilles, "You sleep, Achilles. As for me, you have forgotten all about me. You used to be not at all uncaring about me when I was alive, but now that I am dead, you care for me no further." I'm going to say that's not about emotions at all. That's about Achilles not giving Patroklos his ritual, his send-off rituals, the funeral pyre, excuse me, and all the sacrifices and things like that.
I grant you that, but at the same time, you could imagine this kind of, may I say it this way, guilt tripping happening in a lament. where somebody is lamenting how the lamented one thinks that I don't care anymore, but I do care. So it's this back and forth of feeling loss, feeling survivor guilt, all of that. I don't want to psychologize this in a modern way, but it's so easy to do it, isn't it? So I'm doing it.
All right, we've gone on for a little while here.
Yes. So
okay.
So
Perfect.
maybe, but how about some last words from you, dear Keith, or you, Janet, or you, dear Hélène, or you, Sarah?
Well, I can say this is really the center of the course for me in lots of ways. This athleticism that we see in the vase paintings.
Yes. Oh my God. It's so important. It's so important for Greek civilization because because athleticism is so much part of the whole life experience and death experience. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So the chapters are long, but stick with them.
It's yes.
Conceptually
Be
very
brave,
rewarding.
all you people out there. After 7 and 8, things get easier. I think of the little engine that could. If you made it this far, where the little engine says, "I think I can, I think I can, I think I can." From here on, it'll be, "I know I could, I knew I could, I knew I could, I knew I could."
Yes, exactly.
How's that for being infantile? But that's my subjective reaction.
All right. Thanks, you all. And we'll reconvene soon for hours 9 and 10.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Okay. Bye-bye.